So I'm Dr. Chris Cicchetti. I teach philosophy here at Centenary, and also I'm on the steering committee for the Reconciliation Dinner. So the first thing I want to do is welcome Dr. Holloman, president of Centenary College, up here to the microphone.
Thank you. My name is Chris Holloman, and it's my privilege and honor to be the 31st president of Centenary College. I moved to Shreveport in July of 2016, and so shortly after that, the first Reconciliation Dinner took place, and I sort of was on the fringes of my consciousness, trying to get moved and so forth and so on. And so I was so excited when Chris and Kate came to me 18 months ago now, I think, to ask if Centenary could host the second Reconciliation Dinner. I think I hesitated about 30 seconds, not even that long, 5 seconds before saying yes. This is such an important event. As you probably know, Centenary is 193 years old. We celebrate our bicentennial in 2025. This year we're marking our 110th year in the city of Shreveport. In our new strategic plan, one of the markers that I put down was that Centenary should be Shreveport-Bossier's College. Part of that is acknowledging and owning the history of Shreveport, Bossier, Northwest Louisiana. Its great triumphs, but its terrible tragedies. And I am committed to having Centenary College take part in efforts of reconciliation, forgiveness, awareness, truth-telling. And tonight we come together to tell the truth. I am so honored that you have come. I am privileged that we are able to make space for you here. You are always welcome at Centenary. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Holloman. We really appreciate everything Centenary's been able to do for us. Without this facility and this space, it really would have been impossible. So as I said, I'm Chris Cicchetti. I teach philosophy here, and I'm here to welcome you to the Reconciliation Dinner. The very first Reconciliation Dinner was hosted by Nat Fuller in Charleston, South Carolina. Now, Nat Fuller, he was a slave. When he was held as a slave, he got trained as a chef. He learned to cook, he learned to manage, he got respect, enough respect that he was allowed to run his own business on the side. Civil War happens, 1865 comes, he gets the freedom he should have had all along, and he decides to host the first Reconciliation Dinner. At his restaurant, the Bachelor's Retreat, he invites white members of the community in Charleston, South Carolina, black members of the community in Charleston, South Carolina, together at the table to have dinner. I think that's a really remarkable gesture for him to have made. More recently, cities have started to follow in his footsteps, to say we need to capture that spirit of what he was doing. Charleston has done a sort of recreation of the dinner as well. In 2016, Slow Food led an effort to host the first Reconciliation Dinner in Shreveport. That Reconciliation Dinner recognized civil rights pioneers in our community and people who are working across racial divides today. So it was a wonderful opportunity. I didn't attend that dinner. I heard about it from my neighbor, Megan Shapiro. We talked and I thought, wow, that is wonderful. That needs to happen. That's something that we really need to make sure happens again. And then I got myself into this. So that's wonderful. I think it's great. This time, when we came together, we sat down and we said, okay, what are our goals? What are we going to do with the next Reconciliation Dinner? We came up with 4. We wanted to excavate our history. That is, we want to know what is going on, what stories do people have that we hadn't heard. We want to encourage community. That is, we wanted to come together across different parts of our community of all different ways and say, well, what are you hearing? What are you experiencing? What's happening with you? We want to continue the dialogue that the first dinner started and that many other activities in our community have been carrying on. We wanted to make sure that dialogue went farther. And most importantly, we wanted to share our stories. Reconciliation is a skill. It's not a policy. It's not the sort of thing the government can do. It's the sort of thing that you have to practice. It's sort of a virtue, right? You need to practice listening to other people. You need to practice telling other people. You need to practice engaging and thinking about what the world looks like, right, from different people's perspective. It's a skill. It's a skill. It takes practice. And so tonight, that's what we're going to do. We're going to practice reconciliation. We are going to share our stories. We're going to be talking to each other with stories of reconciliation to get an effort to see what that might look like. Okay. Before we get into that, though, we need to acknowledge the participants who were invited tonight, as well as everyone else who made that possible. And to do that, I want to invite Kate Pedrotti up to the microphone.
Good evening, everybody. As Chris mentioned, my name is Kate Pedrotti, and I'm very proud to be working here at Centenary College and also to have been able to be a part of the steering committee for this reconciliation dinner after having had the great privilege to attend the first Shreveport Reconciliation Dinner in August of 2016. And one of my tasks as part of the steering committee was that I was the person who received all of the nominations. Originally, I got to read through all of them. I compiled them for our selection committee and got to pass them on that way. And that was really one of what I would consider to be the great privileges of my life. I feel like I learned a whole lot about the city that I call my home and about the people who live in it. And it's been just knowing these people's stories and knowing how much the nominees were admired by their communities, by their friends, by their family members, has been a source of great strength for me. It's kind of sustenance. And especially on days when I get very kind of depressed about the state of the world in which my two children are growing up, or have those moments where I think that change is not possible. I think all of the people who are here tonight, and really all of the people who were nominated, prove that is not the case. So at this time, we would like to recognize all of our selected participants who are making such a great difference in our community. And I would like to invite all of you who were selected participants to please stand and be recognized and thanked. So that's those of you with the red name tags, our selected participants. Thank you all for being here tonight. And everyone, hopefully when you checked in, received a packet with a biography of each of our selected participants. If you didn't, we've got plenty more that are at the check-in table. And I'd encourage you, please, to take those, to read them, to be inspired like I've been inspired by all of these people who are doing such wonderful things. And hopefully, one of the reasons we wanted to make that available to you is that hopefully you'll find some connections maybe with people that you have not met before tonight, but that you can see that they're working on things that interest you or that intersect with what your passions are. So we really hope that tonight is one of celebration, but also connection. We do have 3 selected participants who were not able to attend with us tonight that I'd like to recognize. They are T.D. Antoine, Representative Cedric Glover, and Lynn Stevens. So let's extend, in their absence, let's extend a participation for them. And finally, I'd like to extend a very special welcome to 4 high school students and 3 teachers from Caddo Parish's Transformation Zone program who are joining us tonight. When I call your names, if you could please stand and be recognized. We have Janae Gallion and Christian Gay from Booker T. Washington New Technology High School. And we have Eden Holmes and Contravious White from Woodlawn Leadership Academy. And they're here along with educators Patrick Dennis, Crystalyn Whitaker, and Renee Ellis. These students were selected by their teachers to join us tonight based on essays they wrote after viewing the documentary Beyond Galilee, which we will also be shown at Centenary in this coming week on Tuesday evening. And so we're very honored to share this evening with them. And now I'd like to invite Chris back to tell us a little bit about the chefs who have planned and prepared our meal this evening.
All right. Dinner wouldn't be anything without the chefs. We've had a wonderful group of chefs that are able to do this, and I want to extend sincere appreciation to them. They donated their time, their effort, sometimes some of the ingredients to be able to be here tonight. I think it is a phenomenal contribution. It's certainly not something that we were prepared to pay for. That would have been impossible. So we could not have done this without them. The chefs are Hardette Harris led up the team of chefs. Us up north is one of the things Hardette's involved in. If you don't know Hardette, you really should. Is she in here? It's the problem with thanking the chef. There she is. There she is. Mavis Thigpen from Eddie's Seafood and Soul Food. Gabriel Balderas from El Cabo Verde. There he is. And John Paul Young and Brandon Fail from the Levy. There. All right, so what's next? Oh, the sponsors. Yes, we need to talk about the sponsors.
Yes, this is very important. So as you know, since you're here, the Reconciliation Dinner is a completely free event for all participants, which would, of course, be impossible to accomplish without the support of many generous sponsors. And it's important to note that many of the sponsors are supporting the Reconciliation Dinner not just with monetary or in-kind donations, but with their presence here tonight. They're participating in the process along with you. And I think that speaks volumes to their commitment to what we're doing here. We'd like to take a moment to recognize those representatives and the organizations they're with and thank them very much for their leadership in the community. So from Christus Health, we have Isaac Palmer. If you would just wave or stand up, Isaac. The Community Foundation of North Louisiana is a very generous sponsor, and unfortunately, kind of last-minute emergency has prevented Christy Gustafson, the executive director, and her husband, Craig Harris, from being here tonight, but she sends her regrets and just reiterates her support for what we're doing. Carlton and Rachel Golden. Okay. Representing Masid Yashin Shreveport, we have Kim Smith and Adele Durat. From Grace United Methodist Church, Casey Monero, and along with selected participant, Pastor Juan Huertas. I think he just From our host, Centenary College of Louisiana, President Christopher Holloman and his wife, Mrs. Connie Holloman. From Sodexo Food Service at Centenary College, Rosette Toussaint. Representing Slow Food North Louisiana, who, as Chris mentioned, really kind of spearheaded the first dinner and were very enthusiastically supporting this year's dinner. We have Karen Wissing. And we've also received important support from a few people who were not able to be with us tonight, including Keith Hansen from Twin Engine Labs and Mahaffey Farms, Real Barbecue, and also First Presbyterian Church of Shreveport. So.
All right, we're almost finished, but it takes a lot of people to bring this together. Let me go with the steering committee. The steering committee met repeatedly since last August to organize, to plan, to coordinate. The committee was made up of myself, Mary Dumas, Jennifer Hill, Kate Pedroti, Deborah Robertson, and Annette Simmons. If you would please stand. Finally, there was the selection committee. This group of people met to review all of the people who were nominated. They got to read all of those files. They got to get it all together. I told them it would only take a couple of hours. 5 hours later, they were still there. They were so diligent and careful, reviewing every single one, thinking very carefully about who to invite because he couldn't invite everybody who needed to be there. The selection committee was made up of Adrian Critcher, Maxine Sarpy, Clay Walker, and Crystalyn Whitaker. Please stand up. Okay, so now's one of the moments you've been waiting for. It's time to serve the food. So, do you want to get started there? We'll be back in just a minute to talk about what we'll do with the rest of the night, but... All right.
The food is coming to you.
Huh? No, the food is coming to you, but yes. Yeah. The food is coming to you. You don't have to go anywhere. You can stay where you're at. It's coming to the table.
Now, old Joe isn't going to go just automatically give a stranger work. So he invited him inside. He fixed him a bowl of soup from the soup that he had had for dinner. And he got a feel for the guy. And after a while, he thought, you know what? I've work for you. Come over to this window. I'll show you. And he said, see that farmhouse over there? That's a selfish trader that lives there. We once were friends. And he crossed me. I want you to build a fence so high that I don't even have to see that man's barn. I want you to, now tomorrow morning I'll show you where the wood is, it's in the barn, and when I have to go into the village for work, I want you to go ahead and start work, and I'll check your work in the evening. In the morning, he hitched up 2 horses to his wagon and he set out for the village. And the carpenter found the wood and started doing his work. It wasn't until twilight that old Joe crested the hill, and what he saw made him even madder than he had been in the first place. He was furious. And so he made the horses go even faster, and he was about to crawl off the seat of the wagon and give this guy what for, because what he had done, instead of building a fence, was that he had built a bridge. And his finger was out, and he was about to tell him just what he thought of him. And just at that moment, Peter, his neighbor, started walking across the bridge, and his arms were stretched wide, and he said, Joe, I would never have had the courage. I am so sorry. Will you ever forgive me? And Joe went, of course I will. And they both hugged. And the carpenter, he was asked if he could do some more work, but he says, I have work elsewhere. We, here in this room, we are the bridge builders. When I work with other organizations, sometimes people say, well, the ones who are the problem aren't in the room. The people with all the power aren't here. Where's the mayor? Where's etc.? And in every situation, the people who are the problem are not in the room. They never are. We are here because we are the bridge builders. And we have one agenda, and that agenda is to find a way to create reconciliation for Shreveport. For us, for our families, for our kids, and for our grandkids. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to start out by sharing some stories, and I'm going to ask Deborah, Lewis, and Mavis to come up front. So, wisdom is embedded in our personal experiences. If experience is the best teacher, story is second best. And rather than invite people to come and receive wisdom, what we're hoping to do is to connect all the wisdom that we have in this room together. Now, storytelling is easier if you have all the time in the world. We have 100 people in this room, and we want everybody to get a chance to tell a story. So we've designed a process that'll work. And I've asked these 3 people to come up and share a 3-minute story, yes, 3 minutes, so that we can get a feel for what that's like. The question is, what is reconciliation? What is it to you? You're not, Rosie, you're wrapping up the evening. Not now. I'm sorry. All right. Rosie's going to wrap up the evening. Isn't that going to be cool? She's going to listen to everything we said, and then at the evening, she's going to tell us what we need to remember. So the way this process works is after we hear these 3 stories, I'm going to give you a chance at your tables to tell stories just to a partner. And then we will create a space where the people with the red bars, those participants that have been selected, get a chance to share with the whole table. One story, short story. It doesn't have to be the best, most powerful story you've ever heard. It's just whatever comes into your head. We'll share those stories, and then after a while, you get a chance to just see where the conversation goes. Then we will ask each table to suggest one teller to come up during dessert, and we'll have a storytelling show, and we'll get a chance to share some of the best stories as a group, embedding the wisdom of one in many. First, I'd like to ask Louis Brissette. Oh, all right.
Good evening, and welcome to the Reconciliation Dinner. My name is Louis Brissette. I got married in 1974 to the wife I thought was going to be my wife for life. That didn't turn out that way, as you'll see in this story. I also have a daughter at that time, 4 months old, Corvette Michelle Brissette. I got a call from my job one day, and my neighbor downstairs said, "Mr. Brissette, please come home. Something is happening in your apartment." Now, I knew that the only people who were at my house was my wife and my daughter, and what could possibly be going on? She said that there was a lot of rumble, Mr. Brissette. So I came on home. And as I got to the house, there was a statue. I'm a man of a lot of statues. I love statues. And I had 2 big, beautiful statues at my house, and one of them was turned over. One of them was kind of cracked a little bit. And I asked my wife what had happened, and she said, "I don't know. Maybe Michelle did it. She's 4 months old, and I know she can't move them." But that, in this point, is going to be my, what's that word? My evidence of things going wrong with my marriage. As I went back to work, and I came back home that evening, my wife was gone, my daughter was gone. I didn't know what to expect, but I figured she might have been with her mother, so I called her mother's house, and she said she wasn't there. So I went on and taken my shower and laid across the bed. Here it comes 12:45 in the morning, and I say, "Wow, they haven't gotten here yet." So I closed that off, and I just say, well, she's got to be either at a friend's house or something there. So that she never came home. I was so much hurt, so much pain, but I took it. Now, I went back to work the next day, and my friend Shelley, we worked the shipping office at Piggly Wiggly Operator's Warehouse at that time. Shelley saw I was not really doing really good, and I was tearing up, and I was kind of really not with it. So he came over and he said, "Louis, what's the matter?" I said, "Shelley," I believe my wife has left me. I say, "I don't know what's going on." I say, "But something is not just right." He grabbed me and he hugged me and he told me, he says, "Man, look, everybody goes through something." He said, "But hold on and put it in God's hand." And that's what I did. And I think that's why I'm here today, is because of Shelley with those words. And I appreciate him for that. Now, finding out as I look into my wife's purse, and I see that there was some fraudulent activities with the welfare office. Someone was getting checks not at my house, but at her mother's house. So we stopped that. But just think how much trouble I could have been in had I not went to the people myself and told them what had happened. My wife had went to California, but I didn't know that until a long time before I can file missing person after the mother-in-law wouldn't tell me where she was. And again, there's still a lot of grief and pain. I still carry that pain right today. But I say to you today that this lady that had done so wrong, we are now the best of friends. Thank you very much.
Mavis, would you introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mavis Hughes Thigpen, the daughter of the late and great Eddie Eugene Hughes. This July, our restaurant will have been open 40 years. But I'll tell you how it all started, and it's a short story. My father had a father and a stepmother, and she wasn't a very nice stepmother. Occasionally, my father and his sister, they would be outside playing, and if it got late, she would lock the door. And at that time, they were living on Milam Street, and the houses set up kind of high. She would lock them out of the house. They would knock. Granted, his father was in the house, but they wouldn't let him in. So my dad and his sister would bundle up under the house and sleep until the next day. Well, it happened quite a bit, and people sort of noticed that. And my dad's distant cousin kind of told another cousin, and my dad was 8 years old then. But Wilma Wallette and Mavis Collie Wallette, they raised my father from the time he was 8 years old. And they did a great job. And that's how my dad learned to cook. Down at the old Freeman and Harris, he started off as a dishwasher, mopping the floor, the kitchen, doing whatever. And he learned to cook, and he was really good at it. And at the age of about 14, he created what you're eating now, the stuffed shrimp. He didn't really get recognized for it until he was about 17 years old. And once he graduated from high school, he went into the Army and he perfected it. He brought it back to Freeman and Harris, and they sold it like crazy. But my mother still today, who is 83 years old, has my father's handwritten recipe for the stuffed shrimp. I think all of that made my father who he was. And his stepmother, she was very sick at the time. She asked for my father and his sister. She wanted to talk to him. My father's sister was in Houston. She didn't come, but my father did. And she apologized. She said she didn't know any better. She was young, and she just thought she was doing what she thought was right, trying to make them model kids. And she asked my father, would he forgive her? And my father said yes. And I think after that is when we blossomed. That's when we just kind of came alive on that corner. And today, we're still thriving. We've been recognized by the Southern Living magazine as the best soul food and seafood in the South. We have lots of accolades and, just everything to kind of tell who we are and what we're about. And if you ever want these stuffed shrimp, fresh, hot, come by Eddie's. We're on the corner of Hollywood and Union. Thank you.
And Debra Allen.
Hello everyone, I'm Debra Allen, and the story I'm about to tell you is very personal, and I've never told anyone. When I was 4 years old, I was living with my mother and going back and forth to visit my grandmother. My mother was very young and working at the telephone company downtown. So I'd spend the weekends with her, but go back and live with my grandmother during the week. Now my grandmother was a very strong-willed woman, and she had this big red Foudon hairdo and red lipstick. One day she sat me down at the table and she pulled out a piece of paper and a pencil. And she takes it, she draws this big circle. Then she draws 2 more circles in there. And she makes these eyes that cross. She makes this mouth with teeth nipples and these big ears. And she says, "This is Daddy Drew. We don't like Daddy Drew." Well, time goes on, and I'm with my mother. We're going on the trolley downtown to shop. And my mom tells me, "I'm going to buy you a new dress because I'm getting married to Daddy Drew." I lost it going, "We don't like Daddy Drew. We don't like Daddy Drew." And that's what started my relationship with my stepfather. He went on to adopt me, but there were times around the table that it was very hard. He would tell me how I wasn't feminine enough, or thin enough, or a man would never want to marry me. So I married pretty young to get out of that house. I had my children, and as I noticed with him, as I had children, he didn't seem like that mean guy that I had grew up with. I was pregnant with my 4th child, Ashley. I wake up after having her, and he's standing by my bedside, and he has these big tears in his eyes. And I realize, I look up at him, I go, "Do you like your birthday present?" Because it was his birthday. She was born on his birthday. He goes, "I love my birthday present." Years went by, and it was a year before he passed away, and we were all around his bedside at the hospital. He'd had a stroke, and everybody was leaving one by one. It was just me and my son Daniel in the room with him, and we talked for a little while and left, and as we're leaving, he goes, "Debbie, I love you." And that was the first time I'd ever heard those words from him. At that point, it took a little while, but I realized then I didn't need therapy anymore, and I didn't need to self-medicate or any of the things I'd done through my life. And the moral of the story is, today, I can't remember any of those bad things that happened to us. I only remember the times that he protected me, and he showed me love, even though he never said so. Thank you.
How about that? So that's an example of some of the stories that we have in us. We've all suffered, we have faced challenges, and yet we understand what it looks like when we bring reconciliation, when lives have been torn apart, and when we've been disappointed. Now it's your turn. So the next process is that I'm going to ask you to find a partner and make it like somebody you're not married to. Mix it up a little bit, because this is about us building friendships. It's about getting to know each other. It's about creating relationships that will survive and thrive as we go forward. And I'm going to ask you in 3 minutes to tell a story of a reconciliation from your personal life, a true story of reconciliation. When we step back away from the preaching and teaching, we find that our actual true experiences are much more educational for us and for other people. So find your partner now, and anybody who doesn't have a partner, raise your hand and I will find you one. Got a partner? Anybody not have a partner? All right, I'm going to give you a chance. When you are listening to a story, that means you're actually listening. It doesn't mean that when someone says they grew up in Chicago, that you say, "Oh my God, I grew up in Chicago as well." That's not listening, okay? Decide who's going to go first. The person who is going to go first, please raise your hand. I want to see those decisions. All right. And then I will At 15 seconds, I'll give you a 15-second warning. At 3 minutes, it's a hard cutoff. This is the most difficult part of it, is to switch and let that other person tell their story. Are there any questions? All right. The person who has agreed to go first, begin your story, please.
Of my children. So I mentioned my son. His name is Aaron Malcolm Martin Johnson. And 20 years ago, my son was going to Byrd High School. He was a senior and he was playing soccer. We had moved here from Roscoe, Illinois. And so he was very excited about the fact that he was playing soccer. He happens to have also been the only child of color on the team. He also has his mother's gift of gab. And he came home one evening and he was not sharing. He told his father and I that when the ball went out of bounds, that the children on the team said, "Midnight, go get the ball." He was hurt. Now again, his name is Aaron Malcolm Martin Johnson. Malcolm, by any means necessary. Martin, no violence. So when he shared with his father and I that this had happened, his father said, "Take him out, take him down." Because of course his father's philosophy had to do with Malcolm. Then he looked at his mother, and his mother went, "No, son, you will find a way." So it went on for a week at least, the fact that he continually came home and repeatedly said that there were children telling him to go get the ball midnight. Then he came home, and I could look on his face and I could tell that something had happened to my baby. And his father said, "You good, son?" He said, "I'm good, Dad." His father said, "Did you take him down? Did you take him out?" He said, "Well, the ball went out of bounds. And when it did, they said, 'Midnight, go get the ball.'" And I said, "No, sunshine, you get it."
All right. And here we have Mr. Big D.
Yeah.
Big D Livingston.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. I appreciate being here tonight. I never thought I'd live to see the day that we see a bouquet like I'm looking at now. Black, white, and any other nationality here, that's fine. That blend in with the bouquet. And this way the life should be. It shouldn't be that divisiveness that we have every day. It's just ridiculous. We learn to love, learn respect, and forget about what your religion, what nationality. As long as you're a good person, you're just a good person. So that's where I live. Now, I've met some people all over the world, a lot of places I've been blessed to go. But anyway, I've met a lot of people. I learned a lot of things. I had resentment in my heart for white folks, my own self, at one time, because where I came from Cotton Valley, Louisiana. Probably nobody ever heard of that. Cotton Valley, out of Spring Hill. And they were so rough on us down there. And I did have some resentments till I went in service. I got to live side by side with white boys. They had the same thing against me. But living together, knowing each other, we just jailed together and forgot about the color barrier. We took care of each other. So that's what we got to do. We got to get up off of hatred, and even though not everybody in the room apparently on the same page, but carry it on to the next generation. Because it's not just I'm the oldest person in the house almost, I'm sure. A lady just told me she's a little bit older than me, but I couldn't believe it. But anyway, I'm not about the old person's house. But anyway, the generation got to carry this on. And you train your children, and don't train your children to hate. Hatred is trained. It's not just born with. Nobody's born with hatred. You're born with. I'm not a spokesman, and I can't talk long on no particular subject. I'm just telling from my heart. I met Paul, and what's his name? Yeah, we met each other some years back. They play music and stuff, so I had them to let them play music. They're little boys, and they wasn't no money. I wasn't making no money off them. Let them play. Now they're grown men and they prosperous and they done well in life, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate all y'all for having me here. Thank you very much.
First of all, I'd like to say that it's such an amazing evening and get together to be in a room with all of y'all and all of the stories that you have. And I am gobsmacked that I'm standing here, to be quite honest, although I have a lot of stories. But I think one of the things that we discussed at our table tonight was finding that point of commonality, finding that humanity one in another, even if we don't recognize it with our eyes, because of constructs that we've been imbued with from childhood, understandings, and the dehumanizing effects that some stories that we hear can have on the people that we see. And about finding the humanity in other people and doing away with those constructs and those edifices that we construct to make ourselves feel better about who we are. And I know that as I've been on this journey with the Confederate removal and going through the dialogue on race and gaining more than just an intellectual understanding of what racism has done in this country, and then owning my part in it and who I am because of the color of my skin and the cultural baggage that I was born into, and discerning what my responsibility is in that. Who am I in that? And then who will I become through the knowing of it and the understanding of it? And then what do I pass on? And what I've come to understand is that once I know it on more than an intellectual level, and once I've owned it, and I recognize myself in it, and then I can look out and then I can recognize all of you in it, then I can begin to rewrite those stories. And I can create a new mythology and a new understanding of who I am as a human and as an American, and who you are as a human and an American, and who we are as Americans. And I'm just very grateful to have been here tonight and to see you and to share your stories and to continue to learn in this who we all are and who I am in the midst of you. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm so thankful, one, because I was a member of the selection committee, I'm so thankful to see all of these wonderful faces here and all these wonderful people who have undoubtedly left an indelible mark upon this world and upon this region. I'm so happy that so many of you were able to make it, and you're so deserving. Those of you who may have not returned calls from time to time, and not shown up when you said you would. We look so much at our mess ups that we sometimes miss just how important we are and just what we do. So thank you so much for all the sacrifices that you make. My getting up here is much like Miss Roxanne Johnson's. I was in the restroom. I came back and I didn't realize that I was going to be needed. So I'm going to get it together, but my reconciliation is a bit twofold, and I'm a pastor's daughter. I'm a pastor's granddaughter. I'm a pastor's great-granddaughter. That's my life. That's our lineage. And I'm a believer in God. I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian in America. I'm a Christian in a nation that was built by Christians who took that God and mistaught him, who took that God and misquoted him, who took the very God that I serve and used him, misused him to inflict fear and oppression upon my ancestors. And I have to reconcile myself with that every day as an American in a nation that was founded on hypocrisy. It was built on oppression, that was built on disparity, and now still thrives with this widening gap between those who have it and those who don't. And I have to reconcile myself with this truth every day. As a leader in the community, as a teacher, 2 of my students, I'm so thankful that they were able to come tonight to get all of this wisdom from so many wonderful people. And I know that they'll remember this experience forever. But I have to reconcile myself every day when I go to Booker T. Washington and stand before 100 black children and teach them American literature. Literature that was written in the midst of hypocrisy. Literature that was written by people who knew better and decided not to do so. And reconciling myself with my nationality is one piece. And reconciling myself with my God is another. And understanding that this Bible that I read and I take seriously and I cherish is more. It's more than just what's been tampered with. That God is beyond that. That even this book that is tens of languages removed from its original utterance, that this Bible with books that are missing, that are withheld from us, that this Bible is not all that God is. And reconciling myself with the fact that I deserve to know who he is, and I can seek that. So my reconciliation was both internal and thankfully is we external every day. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Isaac Palmer. My story is rather short. It'll be the 3rd time tonight I've told this story, so I should be good at it. It's when I was a child entering the 8th grade, so this is 1988. And I came from a pretty decent family. They had put me through private school up until the 7th grade, and it was an African American school, which was great. But when the money ran out, they pulled us out and sent us to public school. And I was very apprehensive from going to private to public, and I'd never given any thought that I was going from a black school to a white school until I stepped off the bus and looked across the yard and saw the sea of white people. And no sooner did I notice that when I heard this yell from the crowd, "Hey you blank," and you know the word we hate to hear, blacks. It was "Hey you." And instantly, I realized I'm the only black one here. I'm the only one. But no sooner than I could have turned around to figure out who it was, because my dad raised me, he forced me to watch Roots all through the 80s on Betamax. I was ready to deliver a butt whooping. But I couldn't turn around fast enough before a little white kid next to me tapped me and said, "What an idiot. Come on, let me show you where your locker is." And so in an instant, you become alienated to an entire group of people. And in the next instant, that one person is able to reconcile that in an equal amount of time. And so that taught me that we're all different. Every group, no matter your race, your color, your creed, there's jerks in the group, and there's extremely nice people in the group. So that was my story of Alex. Alex is his name. We were best friends the entire year. He reconciled.
My name is Thomas, and so one thing to know about me to hear my story is that I'm adopted. I was adopted at birth. I never went through foster care. My mother made the decision while she was pregnant with me. Before this, my mother had a child. Her name is Susanna. She's several years older than I am. And after she put me up for adoption and I was adopted, she had 2 other children, and she kept both of them. And so as a child, this was hard for me to know, like, why was I the one she gave up? Why didn't she keep me? Was I not good enough? I didn't know. I was young. And when I was young, my biological family had a part in my life. Not a big part, but a part nonetheless. I saw them 1, 2, maybe 3 times a year, and we hung out, we had fun. But then I started to think more and more about how, like, I must not have been good enough for her. And I ended up not speaking to her for about 5 or 6 years. Anyone in the family, I didn't speak to them at all, didn't text them, nothing. And then one day, not a nothing, every now and then it'd be like a text, like Merry Christmas. And it was normally a couple of days late, but it came. And it was like every other year. But one day, not that long ago, less than a year ago even, I don't remember if I ran into them or texted them or called them, but we got in touch and we decided to hang out. And I remember we went to Cane's and I saw my sister, and I remember when she was this big and she was running around in the yard with her little Jeep, and now she's this big, and the other one who's younger than me is taller than me, and I was really confused. But so the youngest one runs up to me and hugs me, and it was just such a pure moment, and they were just so happy, and I was actually really happy to see them. And my older sister had had a child since then, so this is my nephew, my first nephew, and it was just the cutest little thing, and he's so sweet. And so when I think of reconciliation, I think of me trying to find a place for them in my life, and them trying to find a place for me in theirs, because we're still working it out. We don't know exactly how often to talk. We try to talk as often as possible and meet up, but we live different lives. And so us finding a place in each other's lives is what I think of when I think of reconciliation. Thank you.
Good evening, family. My name is Curtis Davis. I was asked by my table to come up and share a story that we talked about at the table. But before I do, I want to thank the committee for selecting me. I want to thank whoever nominated me to be a part of something as special as this, because this is actually an amazing opportunity. Reconciliation and the Reconciliation Dinner is about having a conversation that most people don't want to have. This big elephant in the room that said, why don't black and white people get along with each other? Why don't we like each other? So I'll tell my story. In 1990, I was convicted of second-degree murder for that happened here in Shreveport at Grimmett Drive apartment complex. By 1992, I was sentenced to life in prison. In Louisiana, if you have a life sentence, that means that you die in prison. It's called death by incarceration. So I was 21 years old, and I landed in Angola, which was a former slave breeding plantation, as a matter of fact. And it was the bloodiest prison in the United States of America at the time, mostly because the people that were there are very uneducated and living in darkness. And when you're in darkness, you're going to do basically dark acts most of the time. So I'm advocating inside of the prison, trying to get people to understand, hey, we need to stop working. We need to do something. We need to change the laws. Let's do this. And guys are like, whoa. So word gets back to the warden by 1996 that you have this rabble-rouser inside of the jail that's trying to raise an army against you. So he called me up to the ranch house. His name is Burl Kane. And he sat me down. I had my shackles on and I had my handcuffs, and I sat in his house in the living room. And he said, I heard that you think that niggers deserve reparations for slavery. Explain that to me. So I had been studying in the law library and so forth. And I said, if somebody damages a property, or if somebody does a wrong to somebody else, then the legal system says that that person owes the repair of whatever damage or bad thing that happened to that person or that property. So in essence, because white people done what they done in actually forcefully immigrating Africans to this land, making it, outlawing their right to learn, read, educate themselves, work in certain classes. If you find generations later that this class of people are totally destroyed, then you have the responsibility, even generations down, to fix it, to repair it. So he said, well, what you talking about? Look at your condition. Look at how y'all acting. I'm trying to rehabilitate y'all, even though we don't have no rehabilitation in the state of Louisiana. I said, you can't have rehabilitation until you first have habilitation. So we started working, and he said, well, you remind me of that boy Joseph in the Bible. Now, even this man that I thought was the devil started talking about the Bible. And he said, well, you help me rehabilitate them. You help me habilitate them. So we started a character counts program where people learned about honesty, trustworthiness, citizenship, and why it matters, even though we're serving life or death by incarceration. Before my 26 years in prison was over, me and this man who admitted to me that he was a racist, and he taught me the difference between racism and prejudice. Now, most of the people in this room may be prejudiced. Very few of you have the power to be racist. Racism is systemic, it's systematic, it's how your laws are developed, it's why we work to change policies, because racism underfunds schools. Racism makes sure you don't have a black hospital anywhere in the United States of America. Racism is what makes you be able to put $30 billion behind a hip hop industry that promotes codeine usage and different drugs and being the most degenerate people in society. So this is why we work, and this is what I've reconciled myself with through a white man who admitted to me that he is a racist, but he understood my plight to help my brothers. So thank you for having me out here tonight. I love you guys. Peace.
Well, good evening to everyone. Certainly it is an honor for me to have been invited to be a part of this group to speak on reconciliation within our community. My name is Najuri Kamara, and I am a lifelong resident of our community. And as a lifelong resident of this city, I've received all of my formal education within our community. And so I'm rooted in all of the things that is in our community that is good, all that it has to offer, all of the good that is being done, such as this dinner on tonight. And until such, I refuse to accept the negative perception that seems to prevail over what I believe could be a utopian society where everyone can benefit and grow. At our table, we had some wonderful stories of coming from a background of privilege, a child of a diplomat at the State Department, and other coming from a privileged background and attending Tuskegee Institute. So I was wondering about my own experience in my community and what is it that I could share about reconciliation. And I'd just like to share where I am mentally, emotionally, psychologically with regard to our community. A wise woman and good friend of mine named Beth Foster, she hails the mantra that Shreveport is a city of roses, filled with beautiful bouquets that only can be enjoyed if we take time to dig through the thorns. As a participant in this conversation and dinner tonight, I believe that what we're trying to do is reconcile for our community what it is that we hope to see as the future direction for our city. Certainly, and I'm sure that there are many of you who believe that things can be better in terms of race relations and whether or not we get along between the colors. I would desire that we would stop the finger pointing and that we would cease that, because I'm of the mind that over the last several numbers of years, all of the in our leadership, we've had opportunities for African Americans to be at the helm of our school board as superintendent, or even elected members of the school board in leadership, members of the city council, African Americans in leadership, as well as our past mayors. Even at the parish commission, we have African Americans who are at the helm and even in leadership there. So where there are problems, where there are challenges or obstacles, where it continues to appear that the African Americans in this community are not prospering to the degree that we can, I would like it to be known that I'm of the opinion that we as African Americans, we need to look in the mirror. We need to look at what it is that we're doing that is not beneficial for the majority. What is it that we're doing that we're engaging in? What plans, what groups that we're a part of that is promoting separatism in our community? I believe that I've worked across racial lines and I've worked across political lines, and I've come to the consensus on issues that matters, that impact as a whole. But myself, I'm able to see that we can make a difference in our community if we look at the issues that are relevant to all of us and not the color of our skin. So as I come to say that I choose to reconcile our community by focusing on what is wrong and not what color we are. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brandon Fail. I hadn't expected to speak tonight. I'm here, well, I had come tonight on behalf of the restaurant that I own, The Levy, to bring out some of the food that y'all ate this evening. But I haven't long been in the restaurant business. Through December, until this past December, for about 3.5 years, I ran a nonprofit, and we put on really nice, to some degree, life-changing events for young LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender undergraduates from around the country. And we put on sort of like career fair weekends where we would fly in these very high-achieving LGBT young people and put them up for a weekend and work with them for 2 or 3 days straight on how to be themselves and on what they wanted for their futures. And we would put on career fairs with a lot of elite employers, and a lot of them would walk away with great interviews and good jobs. And I loved this work, and it was really nice. And one of my goals, or one of the things that I was hired to do in the first year, was to diversify the crowd of students that we were serving, and in particular to seek more racial diversity, and we did that. And I was proud that we had done that, and I felt really satisfied, and I thought that that was going to be reflected in a lot of positivity from the students, who themselves had called for it. Students these days are really keenly aware, I think, of the sort of, of the pressing need to have diversity when you're in a large group of people, and they're uncomfortable, I think probably appropriately, right, in a sort of a homogenous or in an all-white group. But the feedback wasn't as positive as I'd expected, and that was humbling, because I thought things had gone so well. And what I learned, and what I did was I polled students directly, and I asked a lot of detailed questions. And one of the first insights for me was, well, geez, I have met a lot of students, and I met a lot of young people who were awesome, and I was super proud to have got of them, and super happy to have gotten to know them. And I realized, I don't know an awful lot of Black or Latinx students or students from Asian backgrounds. I know a lot of students who look like me. And that was a first insight. And so over a few months, I had a lot of intimate conversations with students of color in particular. And what I learned took me by somewhat surprise, because I sort of thought, well, what the feedback says was we're not having a great experience and we don't feel these events are inclusive. And I thought I'd focus on big programmatic things like who the speakers are, or what the folks from companies are saying, or what you were going to talk about in the breakout conversations, or all kinds of things that I could impact in my role. But what I learned over and over, again, took me by surprise. It was that these sort of surprising micro-scale interactions that people have, in very particular, the moment that a young person for the first time walks into a room this size, filled with people that they don't know. And especially in this group was like a mostly white group of people. And it was mostly men too. And it was mostly tall white guys in suits with ties. And it wasn't, as one might have suspected, it wasn't that that's intimidating. It wasn't that that's culturally different. It was in very particular that I heard over and over from the mouths of Black and Latino students in particular. When I walk into a room, it's as if I'm not there. It's as if everyone else in the room has their conversations going, and they're looking at each other, and they're talking to each other, and they're having a ball, and it's as if I am not there. No one even notices me, they said. And the insights for me were many in number. Okay, so, like in my role in running this organization, I realized, well, there are things I've got to do to actually make things structurally different if I want everyone in the room to have a good time. But the more personal impact on me was to realize that I do that too. Not only that I do that too, but that I'm emblematic of all of the people that do that, right? And that if I'm in a room of people like this, I am going naturally, just like all of us, Black and white alike, or of whatever background you are, I'm going to gravitate toward people like me, and that's going to be the natural thing. And the effect that that's going to have on other people is going to be negative writ large, whether I like it or not. And that what I have to do, if I want to not take part in that type of it's a type of structural racism. In other words, it's not exactly something I choose. I'm not walking around trying to erase people, but I recognize that I do that. And I realize that I have to try hard not to do that. And that if I'm in a room with this many people, I will admit this, it's not natural. It doesn't feel natural. But I know that I must spend time and spend actual attention seeking out people who don't look or talk or sound or work like me, for the reason that I don't want to be a part of that structure anymore, and I'm interested in all of you, and I want to get to know you as people. So for me, reconciliation is personal, and if, like me, you find this a little bit new and are looking for a way to reconcile or a way to participate, I encourage you to think at the micro scale and think at the level of when you are in a room, who do you interact with, and to pay attention to that because it's something you can change. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Angelique Feaster Evans, and I am privileged to represent our table. I thank Kim and Francis both for sharing their stories of reconciliation. On my journey of reconciliation, I'm reminded of the words of the late great activist Ossie Davis, who once said that any form of art is a form of power. It has impact. It not only moves us, it makes us move. And so my journey of reconciliation started as a second grade student at Platt Elementary in Houghton, Louisiana. And for those of you from the country, we say Houghton. Me, a little brown girl with flat feet, not knees, and deaf in one ear, had a teacher by the name of Miss Marie Gibson, second grade math teacher, who imparted in me this phrase, "Can't, never could." And so through that, and all of the work that I've done and all of my educational trajectory, I landed here at Centenary College. And I vividly remember my public speaking class, and we were charged with giving 3 speeches: a demonstrative speech, an informative speech, and a persuasive speech. And 2 of my speeches I selected to discuss Brother Malcolm X and Afrocentric education versus Eurocentric education. And at the culmination of that particular course, it was opened up for our fellow students to share comments regarding all of our speeches. And I remember this one Caucasian girl that posed the question, why did I select Malcolm X and Afrocentric education to share as a part of my speeches? And before I could raise my hand to answer, my fellow classmates responded for me. Now, mind you, I was one of 2 African American students in my speech class. The other was a soccer student, and so we both were in, truly the minority in our course. But other students stood up and said that if I did not share my experiences and my story of Brother Malcolm and of Afrocentric education, when would they have had the opportunity to hear those different perspectives, those different lived experiences? And so fast forward to my work today, that thread of can't, never could, it stays with me because through Mahogany Ensemble Theater, I'm able to express artistically and culturally the lived experiences of people of the African and African American experience. But when we think about reconciliation and when we think about our commonality, because we seek to explore the common ground of humanity, we all, no matter black or white, we have joys, we have pains, we have heartbreak, we have love. We all have those shared experiences. So can't, never could continues to be a part of my process of reconciling not only my culture, my heritage, but also finding those commonalities, those threads that weave us all together so that we can continue to move beyond racial boundaries, racial barriers, and find ways to unite, to bridge gaps, and to always remember that can't, never could. And so I charge each of us here tonight, in the words of Audre Lorde, when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in service of my vision, it becomes less and less important whether I'm afraid. So continue the journey of reconciliation, and let's move beyond our fears and remember, can't, never could, and we can't be afraid. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dorothy Wylie, and we had really good discussions of storytelling at our table. But some kind of way I was kind of pushed to come up here. Well, anyway, I was born in, I know, to you too. I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and my family moved to Shreveport in 1963, and I was 3rd grade. But when we lived in St. Louis, Missouri, we already had an integrated system there, an integrated school system. We lived in a community where there were Asians, blacks, and white. The Asian lady was our babysitter. The Caucasian couple was our Bible study person, and we just go to each other's house. So it's not that I did not recognize race. Yes, I knew color, but I did know racism until I moved to Shreveport. And I was 3rd grade. And of course I had an older sister who was 7th grade, and she had a culture shock when she came here because she was looking for the white people. And my mother went to the school because then we were in all black schools when we came here. So my mom went to the school to let them know how we grew up in this community, already diverse. And as we, moved into Eden Gardens. That's where we lived. As a matter of fact, our house was, I could really, as we say, hop the fence and go to school. And when we came out on the tennis court, of course, Mom would be out there hanging up our panties and everything on the line. And I'm like, whoa, Mom, you can't be out there doing laundry while we're on the tennis court. Everybody sees our clothes. But that's just the way it was. And growing up in Eden Gardens was really cool. I had a little brother, and he and his friend would ride their bicycles because we stayed right next to Spring Lake. But I remember his name was Dortoys, and he would tell them to get back to your own side of the track. And that's why I start hearing all these words, stay on your side of the track. You couldn't be allowed in another neighborhood after a certain hour, and so on and so on. And then after that, we were bused. Our school closed down, and we were bused over to Captain Shreve High School, and that's where I graduated. And going over there, it was really different. But you know what? That's because they didn't, or we didn't really understand actually what was going on. We knew we were leaving a place of comfort going somewhere else, and we didn't like passing. They had cotton fields on 70th Street. There were still cotton fields on 70th Street that we had to be on the bus and look over there and see. But you know what? After a while, we got past that. But I can admit that I was biased in my decision regarding race. Because then they would say, oh, y'all look alike. No, we all don't look alike. But like I say, a lot of this came up. But most of us, when we are asked if we are racist, we try to determine if we have done anything overtly negative that we know of. However, what we should be asking ourselves, if we have been nice or kind or compassionate or helpful to those that are different than we are, than those who are similar to us. But I believe that admitting that one is racist is the key factor to being helped, just like anything else. Sometimes when we go to these anonymous places, Alcoholic Anonymous, I'm an alcoholic. That's saying I need some help. But if we just keep holding all this in, we could never have any help. And I am a Christian, and I'm still going through my journey of sanctification. And I know that I won't be completely sanctified until I see Him, my Lord and Savior, face to face. But God designed His people so that we need everyone in order to fully understand who He is, because He knows the thoughts and the plans that He has for us. The thing that I want to say about racial reconciliation is it is the restoration of peace and harmony, friendship and unity to racial relationships that had previously been littered with tension, conflict, misunderstanding, and frustration. We must step up for the sake of justice and reconciliation, and we must do this in practical ways that we care about these issues that are so deeply rooted in the Scripture. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Good evening. First, I want to thank the selection committee for selecting me to be one of the recipients of this year's Reconciliation Awards. I'm not going to give you a lot of lecture. I think I've learned a whole lot tonight from the previous speakers. I think they've been fantastic. And I have the dubious distinction of being selected from my table to stand here to talk about a situation of reconciliation. I went to Seabird High School, and my first going to Byrd, I think we only had maybe about 30, 40 African-American students in the school out of about 2,000. And I attended school with Reverend E. Edward Jones's kids. We had gone to an all-black elementary school together, and then we came to Byrd. But I vividly recall some challenges at Byrd. Of course, I would never forget the day that George Dartars came on campus and he brought all the police officers of the city of Shreveport, and they circled the campus and wouldn't let any of us out of the school. But I had this one teacher at Byrd, and he was my math teacher, and I always loved mathematics, but it was nothing I could ever do to earn an A in this guy's class. And I would always make the highest score in the class on all the tests, and I tell you, I didn't really like him. And he was probably as far right as he could be, and I was far left of center. So we didn't really see eye to eye on a lot of issues, only to find out when I graduated with my math degree. Yes, he motivated me to go and get a math degree. I wound up working with him in the engineering department at Bell South. And we worked on the same engineering team, and I don't think he really liked the fact that here I am working with one of my students, but I guess we tolerated each other. And then it was later in life that I finally got to sit down with him and have some serious conversations with him when he became elected to the Caddo Parish School Board. And one of the things that I'm happy that I did, he just passed away this year. And I'm very happy that last year I paid a tribute to him on Facebook. And I thank him for instilling in me and teaching me the mathematics and giving me the encouragement that I needed to go on and get a degree in math. Although it was kind of tough, I looked at it as an adversarial relationship at first. But you know, out of adversity comes strength and sometimes great things. So I just want to say, rest in peace, Larry Ramsey. I thank you for what you did for me.
Okay, my name is Cookie Coleman, and I grew up in Stoner Hill, and I moved away after college, and I came back 15 years ago, actively involved in the neighborhood, and I'm passionate about community gardening. And three words that I love right now is we grow together. And what that is about is we grow together with gardening and nutrition and understanding each other about what we need to do to be healthier. And my reconciliation is that part of Stoner Hill coming back, giving back, was the fact that we were, with the city of Shreveport, we have a garden at a location near Magnet High. There was a house there that the city wanted to renovate for nutrition education programs that we were doing with the SPAR location. And it was a wonderful thought, a wonderful idea. When it first started, it was kind of challenging because we had to go before the MPC, and went before the MPC, and the neighbors came before the MPC and said they don't know what's going on, which I've been going door to door telling everybody that we're doing this, community gardening, nutrition education project for our community, to bring our community together to talk about health in a community health hub. So we were there, and they said their thing, and all of a sudden it was passed that we could do it. So it kept moving forward, and little conflicts from people saying they're not aware. And one day, once the facility was finished, the neighbor came up and said, I cannot believe we raised all that hell about this facility, and it's really, really nice. And so now we're in the process of bringing these neighbors together, and we're trying to make sure we have this model for the city to bring communities together to do this. So We Grow Together fits into lots of places as far as bringing unity to our city. But my reconciliation was the fact that the neighbor admittedly that they had judged everything incorrectly, and she came to me and said it and gave me hope that this will work, because I could have been very discouraged because I didn't have the support of the neighbors. So just keep working at it, and we do grow together. Thank you.
I'm Jennifer Hill. I'm on the steering committee for the Reconciliation Dinner this year. So glad you all were able to come and participate. And now we're winding things down. So before Miss Rosie comes up to conclude the dinner, I want to talk about how we can continue the conversation. We can't stop sharing our stories. Some people, when I told them about the dinner a couple months ago, they said, how is one night of stories going to do anything? I'm glad you asked, I replied. This is only the beginning. So we're going to continue the conversation, and we're going to bring more bridge builders into it. So in order to do that, step one is you have a card at your place on the table that says share your ideas. Please write down your ideas on the card on how we can continue these conversations. And there's a big envelope in the middle, and please put your card in that when you're done. And we're going to collect them and have all these ideas. Step two is there are some opportunities in Shreveport in this area that you can participate in or attend. The first, many of you have probably heard about it already, but the YWCA's Dialogue on Race. It's a 6-session series that encourages open and honest discussion by trained facilitators. Topics include definitions of racism, prejudice, and stereotypes, and other topics. I participated in that 6-course session and then the advanced dialogue on race. And I have to tell you, it's an amazing experience. You learn so much from being in that dialogue with there's usually about 10 of you at a table. And this is how we learn about each other. We learn each other's stories and experiences. And when someone tells their story, that's their truth. And none of us can say to that person, no, you're lying, because how can we say that? They haven't. That's their experience. So that's where we learn the most, I think. And then More Alike Than Different storytelling show. It's on March 13th, 6 p.m. in the chapel of First Presbyterian Church. There'll be a diverse group of storytellers, They'll share 8 stories of inclusion and exclusion. Tellers this year include Mario Chavez, Maxine Davis, Nancy Harper, Lee Harville, Derek Henderson, Amari Hosang, Lori Lyons, and Ruby Sear. Okay, and then February 27th, Centenary College will present Beyond Galilee and have a film and discussion in partnership with the North Louisiana Civil Rights Coalition and the YWCA. If you haven't seen Beyond Galilee, you need to see it. It's about the civil rights struggle here in Shreveport. Some of the leaders of that struggle are in this room right now. And T.D. Antoine is the director and was nominated to be here tonight. He unfortunately couldn't make it. So that will be shown in the Whited Room at Bynum Commons and 7 p.m. Tuesday, February 27th. There'll be a discussion panel afterwards, moderated by the Coalition's Executive Director, Debra Allen, and Reverend Dr. McLean, Mrs. Maxine Sarpy, Mrs. Ursula Hardy, and Dr. Lee Morgan will be on the panel. And then please stay in touch. If you're willing to share your contact information, please write it down and include it on the Share Your Ideas card, and we can all be in touch with each other. Thank you so much for coming.
Hi, my name is Debra Robertson,
and I am also on the committee for the Reconciliation Dinner. And I have the distinct honor of giving a bio of someone who's very special, Ms. Rosie Schaffer. She's a longtime resident of Shreveport Allendale neighborhood and is the creator of the Allendale Garden of Hope and Love. She has worked closely with Community Renewal and other nonprofits to help revitalize her neighborhood and was honored at the 2016 Reconciliation Dinner. She will send us forth tonight with a reflection on where we are today and where we need to go in the future. Ms. Rosie Schaffer.
Well, if you can stand, you can.
No, I think I can make it.
Okay, all right, we're good. Just set this down.
Good afternoon. I said, you know, after sitting here listening to all these wonderful people, I said to myself, what can I say that hadn't already been said? It was wonderful. It was great. So, I'm not going to have much to say because I feel real honored to be among you all tonight. One of the problems we have, a lot of us feel like that we can't do much by ourselves. But believe me, one person can make a great difference. If you don't believe that, just ask anybody who lives in Allendale. At one time, Allendale was considered to be the most undesirable place you could live. In fact, so many people felt like that whatever you tried to do, it would be in vain because Allendale had got to a country of no return. That was the thinking of the people who lived there. That was the thinking of the officials and services. That was the thinking of the city of Shreveport. Leave Allendale alone. Whatever you do is not gonna make no difference. But for some reason, I had this notion and this vision that Allendale could be so much better than what you saw then. Because I knew that was not the Allendale that I came to live in and love so well. And so I had this vision to tell people, we don't need to have folks of other races to put us down or say we're not mounting much. We've done a very good job at that ourselves by sitting back, doing nothing, running our mouths, wouldn't even do the things that we ourselves knew would be a better way for us. And so I said, you know, I don't have to take this. I'm going to do something if it's me by myself. And that's what I started doing. I said, now the best way we can do it, we don't have much money. Nobody believes in us. So I'm going to do what I can do. And the best way to me to make a place better is to do the things that we can do that does not call for much money. And that was one of the things I started, a community garden. Allendale was the second garden that got started in Shreveport. So I said, you know, I'm gonna make this place look real beautiful, which used to be the worst spot in Allendale. And if you can see a bad place look good, just imagine what other parts could do if people would make any effort. And that's how the garden got started. The purpose of the garden was to have flowers which would bring beauty and hope to a place that people felt shame to even pass by. If they can see something beautiful in this bad spot, they can say, just imagine how many other things around here could look good if we would do some effort. And that's why I wanted the plants. I had the vegetables so it would bring health to the neighborhood. Because you know, health plays a great role in whatever you do. So many people was eating full meals out of paper bags, cookies, that kind of stuff, pops, wasn't getting a balanced diet. It was a lot of diseases going on in the neighborhood. Some people didn't even want to come in the neighborhood because they felt like something would contaminate them and they would make themselves sick. So we started these flowers. Now we got good food over there. The neighborhood is beautiful. In fact, several people have signed up with the Fuller Center on the house waiting list for new homes to be built. So people are coming back to Allendale, like Aldo saying, in droves. But I also want to leave to the rest of you all that was here tonight, we at a stage in our lives with race relations that we now can make this life better for all of us. Now what we have to do, we have come a long ways in 30 or 40 years. I remember 30 or 40 years. Most of you that's old enough can remember, if you're true to yourself, 35 years ago, the conversation that we had tonight, no way would we had that conversation 35 years ago. We wouldn't have had it between the races. It's not only do we have a problem with the black race, the white race, we have a race problem with all people that I have met. We need to stand up, take responsibility for things that we're doing that we ourselves know is not right. We don't need no law. We don't need no piece of paper to say what you're doing is wrong. We know in our hearts there are things no one has to tell us is not right to do to other people, and race does not have anything to do with it. So let our conscience guide us, tell us what to do. When we are not responsible for what our parents did, we were not here. We was just caught up in a situation was that way, but now we know better, and it's left up to us to change it. We should not dwell on the past. Yes, think about the past. Tell your children, your grandchildren, how things were, if you want to, but do not dwell on it because it's nobody's fault. It was a situation that was going on that needed to be fixed, and a lot have been fixed. And like I said, we have done well, but it's still a long way to go, and let us continue to do the things that we know that will be good for all of us. And nobody, please do not think that one person has the advantage over another, because whatever affects one person, if you don't fix it, it's going to end up being a problem for us all. Thank you, and may God help us continue to struggle. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to need some help. Okay, you want that? This way. What you want? This way, not you just go. Not that fast. Not that fast.